Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 7, Episode 11. 7-Eleven, that's a thing in America. Hey, everyone cheer. The episode's called Parallels, so welcome. What are you looking so upset about?
That's how we're opening this. Hey, that's a thing.
Yes, it's also a thing in Japan. Apparently 7-Eleven is very good in Japan. I've heard this from people.
Oh, well, the people are never wrong.
It's much better than the 7-Eleven in America, is what I hear from Americans who have been to Japan. Apparently do a lot more fun, like, sort of like, you know, hot food that you can just sort of like get quickly and grab and go.
I did not realize that was the aim of those stores, but sure, why not?
I don't think it is. I think it's a convenience store, but over the years they've added, like, you know, there's some hot dog rollers, there's some, you know, some quick hot food that you can
It's
take
like the
on the
people
go.
who go to IKEA to get a hot dog.
Kinda, but on a much smaller scale.
Yeah. I miss IKEA hot dogs. I don't know why.
I've actually never had an IKEA hot dog. I hear things, but
They're like not like special, but it's the
they're cheap. I hear.
sheer like they are cheap. Well, they were. I don't know if they still are. It's the sheer absurdity of walking around like a store like IKEA and just being like, yeah, sure, hot dogs. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they sell these here?
It's processed with the same sawdust that's in all the furniture.
Hey, tastes fine to me.
Anyway, welcome everyone. So Parallels. So it's a Worf episode. Worf starts going through multiple realities. At first he just thinks he's blacking out and has a concussion, but you know, there's some subtler things early on where, oh, that feels like someone was there before and now isn't, or they've appeared suddenly, or wait a minute, that uniform's changed a little bit. It's all subtle differences at first, and then it kind of builds and escalates as it goes on. So yeah, we'll get into it. I guess I'll just start off by saying this is the best episode of this show in at least like half a dozen episodes, maybe a bit more. I'd have to go back and check what was in the earlier chunk of the season.
I have some. It feels strong to call it critiques, but more just. I feel like by the end, I was like, it didn't do quite enough. I wanted it to do something a bit more with its concept beyond just like don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun with it.
I think that's fair. I think maybe the solution at the end, it does feel a little bit easy and quick, but I think that's just a simple case of if you wanted that to be fleshed out, it would have been a two-parter, because I don't think you could take away from anything that was in the build-up to that part of the episode. I think you either wrap it quickly, which is just kind of a necessity because we've got 45 minutes or whatever, or you commit to it being a two-parter and spend the solution, give the solution like a whole episode pretty much to explain how it's going to work, how we get back to it. Maybe because there's one like great little idea they throw in right at the end, which I really liked, and I'm like, oh, we could have done a lot with that if we stuck with like more of this.
It's a theme with this show right now, isn't it? It's like, hey, let's do more with that. Well, at least this one was actually good for the whole episode. Yeah.
I think the difference is, those last couple episodes had one great idea surrounded by, well, shite. Whereas this was like, no, this was a good episode that had another great idea on top of it, which could have even taken it further. But I think the big thing, though, is just how funny a lot of this episode is, which I think we kind of predicted because Worf was the right character to do this with, to make it funny. But it caught me off. I think there's like three moments in particular. No, there's not some other smaller funny things, but there's three moments in particular that got me quite good in this. So we'll delve into.
I'm trying to guess what they are, but
well, I mean, okay.
I think I know one of them because I messaged you straight away.
Well, I'm assuming that was early-ish in the episode based on when you said you were watching it. So I'm going to assume that is early on the episode. Worf is sitting in 10 forward with Deanna Troi, and he's effectively saying, hey, you always look after Alexander whenever I'm away, whenever I'm doing stuff. Let's make that official. And I actually started to giggle at that point. This wasn't the funny bit, but I started to giggle a little bit because I'm like, wait, is he just suggesting marriage? Because that's, I almost, not that, like, basically what he describes is a godmother, right? Is if anything happens to me, you'll take Alexander, you'll be his new foster mother, and like that's the whole thing. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But I was thinking maybe they're going to swerve me here and he's just going to be like, yeah, because Troi was looking a little bit concerned, like, wait, what is he asking me here? Right? Because he's like, I think it was the phrasing, let's make this official. I'm like, that sounds like a marriage like suggestion.
It does. I will say, while this is very funny,
Yes.
when I messaged you was not actually that early into the episode. It just I didn't tell you when I was watching it straight away. I was like, oh, by the way, I'm watching it.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Right. In that case, I think I know what one you were messaging
You
for.
do. You definitely do, yeah.
Right? And she sort of smiles and says, well, what exactly? I mean, that sounds good. Like, I think that's a good idea. I would love to look after him if anything happens to you. But what does that, like, make me to you? Like, what does that, like, just she wants to clarify what this means. And Worf says, I think the closest parallel, and then for some reason, Godmother, he never found that in the data banks. So he sort of thinks about it and says, I think the closest parallel in human culture would be stepsister. And she kind of sort of laughs and goes, oh, okay, that's I can live with that. Worf, that would mean that my mother is your stepmother. And the look of horror on Worf's face.
Panic, and he just goes, I hadn't considered that.
And just the shining grin on Deanna's face was, she knows, chef's kiss.
I love that she knows exactly how everyone feels about her mother.
Oh, yes.
Because she knows what she's doing when she says that. And because it's Worf, he takes it so seriously. He's like, I'm willing to take that risk.
Yeah, he still agrees, but it does put a little bit of a pause in his step. He has to think about it. The greatest challenge Deanna will ever have in finding a husband is not attracting a man. It's not making the man fall in love or want to marry her. It's this is who your mother-in-law is going to be. Like, she has to find someone who's willing to take that bullet.
Yeah.
Or her mother should be dead. One of the two. Like,
that could work.
Yes. So that was one. The other one, we'll get to some context for this, but there's a reality they go to where it turns out that Worf and Deanna are married, and he doesn't know that. And there's a moment where she goes to sit in his bed, and the shot of him just sticking his head out from the side of the wall, just terrified of what this moment is. Also, chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
So
excellent
that's that. That said, though, the one you were messaging me for, I assume, is that we're in a different reality where there's no Picard because he died years ago, Riker's captain, and out of nowhere, no warning, no reference, it just cuts to the bridge and Wesley Crusher's in full uniform.
Oh, this killed me. I was like, oh my god, he's there.
This is the worst timeline. This is the worst possible timeline.
No Picard, and you get Crusher instead.
Crusher's doing Worf's job because Worf is first officer on this reality.
Oh, it was just when it was just there. There was no acknowledgement. Like, Worf never even addressed it. He's just there.
Yeah, because they have a meeting scene afterwards where they're discussing what's going on, and Wesley suggests a solution in the same way that a Geordie usually would, and Data turns and goes, yeah, that's an excellent suggestion, Lieutenant. And I'm like, what? Lieutenant? That's not right.
Yeah. I just it's the way no one because Worf just does not react to him being there at all. It just killed me because I knew.
Yeah.
I knew you'd enjoy it so much. It's just.
I think the writers, I think they knew most people would find this funny. That he is just like fairly high ranking on the ship, and no one talks about it, no one questions it. We don't make a big deal that we got, Wheaton back for an episode. We just do it.
Like, obviously, everyone else in that universe, for them, this is just every day. Of course, he's there.
Yes.
But like, Worf doesn't even blink. Like, there's just no acknowledgement whatsoever that Wesley's just there and is doing his job. There's no looking down and nothing.
I think because he's went through so much with the different Deannas at this point, nothing's phasing him. Like, he's like, you know what, I'll just roll with it. That little shit Wesley Crusher's on the ship, I just have to deal with it. So yeah, I mean, early on it's presented as like, he has like a sort of blackout moment. One of the early signs that something's changed is that Picard wasn't supposed to be surprised, which actually, this was funny in and of itself, actually, was the, like, I'm terrified because he's off ship to begin with. He's on the little shuttle. He's coming back because he was at the Batleth tournament, and
he won.
Which he won. He's got a big trophy. He's all excited, but he's a little worried about coming back to the ship. And it's like, wait, why? Why is he worried? And it turns out it's because it's his birthday. And Riker's walking him to his quarters, and he's like, "Hey, Commander Riker, I don't like surprises." He's like, "Yeah, I know you don't like surprises. Of course, I wouldn't dare do anything for your birthday." And of course, he goes in and they go around the corner and like, actually, nice little thing here is that this scene where they're all hiding, they're hiding around the wall that Slater used for that comedy gag with Worf's looking past it. And then at the very end of the episode, when Worf's back in his own universe finally, they play with that again, where he thinks there's going to be a surprise coming from around that side, so he sneaks around it slowly, only to be surprised from behind. So it's rule of thirds. They actually did like 3 things with that wall, which it's a wall. You don't have to explain what a wall is, but it's just like a fun little set piece that continues throughout the episode.
Yeah, clever usage.
So yeah, so that's sort of where things start, and like there's anomalies. Like Picard wasn't supposed to be there, but now he is, and Worf has these little blackout moments. It presents itself like he's maybe lost a little bit of time, right? Because that's how it looks at first, because it feels like he blacks out a little bit in the engineering deck, and when he opens his eyes, Picard's gone. People have moved around a little bit, but there's nothing that different. It just feels like people have moved around and he's unaware of it, like he's lost a little bit of time. But then it turns out Beverly Crusher's like, hey, you were here earlier with a concussion, and you told me all these things, and how you lost that battle at the tournament, and you got hurt. And he's like, what? I won that battle. And then he checks, and no, he got 9th place. And he's like, this isn't right. This isn't right. And that painting's also moved that they gave me for my birthday. That's also moved walls. So this is all the early, like, first 15 minutes kind of setting up, like, what's going on. I think when it really gets to the good stuff, though, is when because he's already noticed that Deanna Troi's outfit's, like, changed from uniform to, like, what she used to wear. And then it changes again, right? And it's when it changes again to sort of the more sort of lowered down thing, but she's still got the badge on. That's when this is the married universe. This is when he goes into his quarters after he's had the really awkward moment on the bridge, because when reality shifted again, he actually changed places, and all of a sudden he's on the bridge, and there's a Cardassian ship like getting ready to fire, and the captain's like, Worf, shields up now, what are you doing? And he's like out of it. He doesn't know what's going on. He's confused.
He says the control panel, everything's moved around, like someone's reconfigured it, and he doesn't know how to do anything on it. Yeah,
and it kind of leads to the possible death of Geordi. I mean, admittedly, I think they've changed realities again maybe by the time Geordi's dead, but regardless, it feels like this is what injures him to begin with.
It definitely is, because he gets injured during the fire that hits engineering, some plasma burns.
Yeah.
That's the first time we hear about it.
Which I thought that was going to be a bigger thing, is Worf's guilt over, like, if he is, like, maybe question that he is just losing his mind and that maybe he's got Geordi hurt kind of thing.
Yeah. We must change universe after that, because Picard's in that scene.
Yes. Yeah, we change when they go to the doctor and it's not Crusher, but it's after all the comedy stuff with Deanna, because he's married with Deanna in 2 universes. The first one without kids, the second one with kids.
Yes, because they're actually, they realize it must be something to do with Geordi, because he's the common link, and it's while they're testing his visor that it changes for the final time.
That's right, yeah. It's his visor. Basically, the Worf went through like a quantum fissure, and Geordi's visor keeps triggering whatever's in his body to make all this happen. So
he is quantum leaping.
He's quantum leaping. And it's the classic sort of idea of, like, every single decision, there's a reality for each outcome of that decision. And that's why some of the changes are quite small, because it's just like, it's basically the same world, but one little thing was different, so on and so forth. Yeah, but yeah, this Deanna, like, marriage stuff is so good, because he gets back to his quarters. Deanna shows up and is like, hey, I heard what happened on the bridge. Let's talk about it. And he's like, please, I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, okay, that's fine. I won't push you, right? And then she just doesn't leave, right? She's like, I think I'll get myself a drink. And he's like, can I help you with something, counselor? And the way she sort of like goes, I don't think you can, Lieutenant. Like, kind of like a sort of sexy, playful way. And I'm like, whoa, what's happening here? Deanna's in like a weird mood here. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then she goes round to the bed and sits down, and she has the little sort of pat in the bed, like, come sit with me, as he's like, doing the angling out from behind the wall. And she, unties his hair, gets it all flowing. She sort of sneaks behind him and starts giving him a massage. It's like, I know you don't want to talk, Worf, but like, it would, maybe help to get it all out. And he like starts to feel the massage, and he's like, this is inappropriate. What are you doing? Like, honestly, the performance here, I really have to, like, how well he plays, like, uncomfortable with all this. Like it's like, oh no, I'm in like a sexual harassment lawsuit waiting to happen. I can't be doing this.
She's like, what? Inappropriate from your wife? He's like, what?
My wife. That's what he says.
Basically, yeah.
More of a question mark at the end, but yeah, that's basically what he says.
Yeah, basically the vibe.
So he's like, what the hell? So this is where like they start actually talking a little bit about, wait, I think I'm jumping through realities. There's like something's going on. There's an anomaly here. It's not just me losing my mind. And they go to data, they trace some particles, signatures, blah blah blah, and get down kind of that path. And like you say, it's when they're testing Geordi's visor that it jumps one more time. And Crusher's all of a sudden there, but the other Doctor wasn't. And he looks at Troi and says, are we still married in this universe? And she says, yes, we are. And part of me thought, oh, maybe she's going to say no, and that's going to be a really awkward question to have to answer. Like, no, Worf, we're not a couple. What are you talking about? So he's too coy though, because by the end of the episode, when he's back in his own universe, he doesn't tell her about this other universe where they were married. He just start making some moves because he's like, you know what, I've got I think I want this now. I think I've got a little bit of a kink now.
Yeah, it leaves it open to suggestion that he might tell her while they're sat down.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, because he said it's a long story, because he freaks out with something she says or does, and he's like, oh no, that's Riker that does that. Riker says something, and he gets all kind of like weird about it. He says, oh, it's a long story, but yeah.
Yeah.
Later, I'll fill out a report. So no, I mean, all of this was just really fun to watch, and I don't think I would have predicted the heart of an episode being the relationship, romantic or otherwise, between Worf and Troi, because it kind of neatly fits into a lot of the different realities. The fact that we start off with him saying, hey, you've been kind of a surrogate mother to my son, let's make that more of a thing, we're such good friends. Then it becomes a reality where they're married, or they're married with kids, and now there's kind of this thing where she realizes that if Worf gets to go back to his own reality, does she even know that if her Worf will come back to her, and how sad that is.
This is the bit I wish they'd played more with, the idea that he's kind of replacing these Worfs, and what happens when he moves on, especially this time where it's not just a random leap again, like between universes, it's a physical journey where he is leaving that universe.
Well, I think
there going to be something to just jump back in?
There is a clue actually that says that whenever he jumps, someone jumps where he was, because later on when we see the original Enterprise, there's a Worf standing there. So that's clearly another universe's Worf that's taken his place. So it does suggest they're all moving around like a puzzle every single time there's a jump.
Could be, yeah, you're right.
So that wasn't something I was thinking about so much in this back chunk of the episode. But I agree. It's an interesting idea, especially since Worf sort of feels like, oh, I should comfort her. Like, I feel responsible for this. It's kind of my fault, but I
especially this one is where we spend the most time, because Geordie's dead, and we just don't turn the visor on, so we don't trigger another jump. And I say this time it feels like there's more repercussions because it's a physical leaving as opposed to a quantum jump. So it's like I feel like I wish they'd played with this a little bit more. The aftermath of this universe that he's leaving behind, especially as we spend quite a bit of time in it, and he gets quite attached to this version of Troi, for example.
Yeah, and obviously even kisses her goodbye at the end when he's getting ready to go. There is some great little things here though, like when they do basically all the different enterprises from all the different realities start to converge into this universe, because like everything's breaking down and like we have to fix this. And this is the real problem I have. If I have one problem with the episode, is that Data just kind of says, oh, like this one quick thing will fix it all and send everyone back to where they're supposed to go. It won't just like fix the rift and stop any more bad things from happening. It will slingshot everyone back into their own realities. And that felt a bit quick and easy. However, the thing that I did like that I could have done with a bit more exploration of is the idea that some of these enterprises have come from really bad universes where they don't want to go back. And we get that one example of a ship that has been losing a war to the Borg, and the Riker looks like just distraught, and he's like, hey, we're barely like left alive. To the point where he tries to fire on the shuttle that Worf's in to fix all this because he doesn't want to go back.
They fire a shot back at it, and it turns out that their shields are really weak. Their whole Enterprise is basically hanging on a thread, and this one little shot just blows it up by mistake.
Yeah, the other thing I do like here though is this Riker, who's captain, seeing our Picard and like just taking a moment at the end of the like sort of explaining what needs to happen, saying, "Oh, it's a pleasure to see you again, sir. It's been too long," and just like Picard sort of like not being too weird about it, but just having a little moment of like, huh.
It's the way he looks to his Riker, being like, okay.
Yeah, it says a lot about this universe's history without really explaining much, which is nice. So yeah, I think by and large, it's just a really fun episode because it's a lot of funny, interesting situations for Worf to get in, and because it would change so much. Like if this was Data who was jumping around, he would just kind of prove what was happening quite quickly because it's like, hey, I can't be just having a concussion because I'm an android, so on and so on. Yeah. Like if it was Picard, because he's in a position of power, like he would probably tackle it in a very different way, kind of thing. You know, like Worf is funny because of his personality, but he's also in an interesting situation because he can move up and down the rank, kind of, and that happens, you know, where his outfit changes at one point to the red, and he's the first officer in that
yeah.
You know, final
and
universe.
It moves believably because, like, yeah, you could buy that he'd be a first officer. Like that's not outside the realm of his capabilities.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, none of these universes are that wild. I mean, the marriage and relationship with Troi is by far the most like outrageous thing that's ever presented to us.
It is, but it also sells it as this started years ago. This was not like an overnight thing. This is a long-term thing that's kind of gone on, like from, you know, it started with just little moments, but you know, eventually became a fully fledged relationship. So it doesn't feel outlandish. Like it doesn't play it as, oh, this was an impossibility, or just we're doing this just because of it's a shock because it's the weirdest thing we can think of. More like, no, just, you know, it's plausible enough.
Yeah, because he even asks, like, he inquires about it, and she gets upset at one point and says, "Oh, it's hard for me to imagine there's a universe out there where you don't love me," and Worf kind of tries to cheer her up by saying, "Well, while we've never been romantically involved and I've never really pursued that, I'm not saying I wouldn't be interested or opposed to it." And it comes across in this way of like, this is kind of revealing that he's actually kind of attracted to her, maybe, and he's just never acted on it for various reasons.
And I kind of like the bit at the end where he's like, you know, getting, you know, the real his own Troi, not real because they're all real, but his own Troi at the end where he, you know, pouring the drinks, he's like put on a little bit of a charm. It strikes me as a case of here it's maybe this is thoughts that he's had in the past, but he's always gone like, no, she wouldn't be interested, whatever, something like that. But this here showing in other universes that, hey, there's at least 2 universes where this worked out. Why not give it a try?
Yeah, I almost don't even read it as like he's actually pursuing a relationship at the end. It feels more just like he's like, you know what? I'm going to invite her to dinner. I'm going to sit down as friends, make it a little romantic, and see if I feel anything. Because clearly the possibility's there. My favorite part of that whole bit at the end, though, is actually when he goes in and he's scared that there's a surprise party and he's looking around the wall, and then she comes out from the like behind him because she's like, it's like not a goldfish, but it's Alexander's pet something that she's feeding, and she's like, oh yeah, I let myself in to feed Alexander's thing, and you know, he's like, oh, I thought, I was worried there was a surprise birthday party, and it's kind of a sweet ending where she says, oh yeah, Riker wanted to do that, but I convinced him you'd hate it. You want to be left alone on your birthday, and it's almost just a little thing of like, oh, she knows him very well, actually. She did. That's actually the sweetest possible thing she could have. It reminded me, I've been rewatching Parks and Rec recently, and there's an episode of Parks and Rec where Ron Swanson is terrified of what Leslie's going to do for his birthday, and he spends all the episode terrified that there's going to be a party or some kind of wild thing that he doesn't want. And at the end of the episode, she presents him a room that has a dinner table with a giant steak, a bottle of whiskey, and like, I think it's the Bridge in the River Kwai playing on a TV, because that's the birthday that would be perfect for him. And it's this idea that he was worried all the time, but she knew exactly what would make his birthday right. So I got a little bit of those vibes from this, where Troi just knows him well enough to know that that's not what he'd want, which might even be that final little like hint for him to be like,
maybe
she knows me. Maybe there's something there. She understands me in some level. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe as an empath, there's like a kink here, because Klingons are so, you know. They feel differently.
Passionate. I think is
the
word. Yeah.
A lot of other races in Star Trek. Maybe there's something there, or maybe it's like I can fix him kind of thing. I'll take that anger out. Yeah. Like, see if you told me before this episode, oh, it's going to be an episode that hints at a Worf and Deanna Troi romance, I'd have I'd have groaned. Yeah, I'd have groaned and rolled my eyes. But you know what? They presented it to me in a way that was funny. It was charming. It sold me that even if they're not a couple in the future, and I know they're not because she ends up with Riker, it made me enjoy that their friendship is real. And I think this episode sold me that these two people even know each other that well in a way that the rest of the show up to this point hasn't. And that's
kind of insane that 6.5 seasons worth of episodes, and it took this one episode to finally go, oh no, they really are that close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's certain pairs of characters that have had a lot of time spent on building their camaraderie or their friendships or whatever it is. And this is just a combination that's just not been as explored as much. I'm sure there's some moments here or there, but this definitely feels like the most it's ever...
It's not been one of the go-to parents.
No, not at all. Honestly, I mean, this is weird to say this, but did Deanna Troi have a good romance episode finally? I think this kind of counts.
It might have finally happened.
It just had to be Worf.
Yeah.
Somehow. I don't know how that happened, but here we are.
I think it might count.
And in a season that's been mostly kind of rough episodes, this is the one that stood out as being genuinely quite good. Like I say, a lot of cool ideas that could have been taken even further. For one of the things they say in that last universe, actually, is that ever since Bajor overpowered the Cardassians, they've become an aggressive empire. And I'm like, oh, that's a fun little what if, given that we're watching Deep Space Nine and all that.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even mentioned it, but there's a whole thing early on about how one of the things that keeps changing is that there's a relay station that, at least in the first... I'm not going to say the original universe, because I think arguably he already switched when he went through the rift in the shuttle.
I think it's open to interpretation, because I would say he might have done, because the surprise party happens.
Yes.
And it doesn't at the end. But also, it could have also still been the original universe, but still something changed anyway, because at the very end before he goes, he's like, oh, am I just going to pick up where I left off? And that data says, time might be a bit weird. You might be a few days ahead. You might be a few days behind. So it's actually replaying that day. So just because it's a different choice that day doesn't mean it's a different universe to what we saw. I don't know.
Silly. I do think the party not happening implies to me that there was already a switch at the start, but it doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But regardless, in the first universe we're in at the start of the episode, this relay station seems to have been hacked by Cardassians and has been used to spy on various Federation things. They mentioned Deep Space 5, I think, at one point is one of the things they're monitoring. But then they go through and then it's no, it's not been hacked. Worf sounds like a maniac because he thinks it has. And then
there's no Cardassian involvement whatsoever. What the hell are you on about?
Yeah, I think in the later universe, it's the Bajorans who have hacked into it and are using it to spy on people because they're more villainous in this universe. So,
I buy it.
I'm sorry, have you not been sympathetic towards Bajor and all of our Deep Space Nine so far?
They are ready to be a cruel, tyrannical, empirical species.
All right, well, I can't argue with that, I suppose. Yeah, fun episode. I'm pretty excited. Like I say, I think the solution feels a bit quick and easy for the sake of wrapping it up quick. And I think that idea of there being some enterprises who don't want to go back to their own reality is something that they could have milked for a whole other episode if they really wanted to. But...
yeah, and I bet next episode we'll be wishing they had.
Well, let's find out what's coming up next on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Which I don't think, obviously, is not going to be next. We'll be back to Deep Space Nine, and I believe we have 2 Deep Space Nines in a row next. So we won't be back to Next Gen for a couple of episodes, and then I think we've got 2 of these in a row after those 2 in a row. So yeah, we're just following the original air dates, so it's a little wonky when it is. And I think it goes back to alternating pretty soon. Oh, John Locke's in this next one. I see his photograph.
Huh.
Terry O'Quinn himself, for those who don't know who I'm referencing. That's where he played on Lost. So the next episode is called The Pegasus, and here's the description on IMDb. Riker finds out his former commander from the starship Pegasus has orders that entail more than what is revealed to Picard, who thinks the Enterprise is en route to recover the lost ship, and Riker is ordered to secrecy.
Okay.
Riker's been pitted against captains, new and old.
Interesting, potentially. I'm not gonna lie, there's a little bit of a worry in the back of my head that we just watched the last very good episode until the final one.
The rating's promising.
Okay.
The rating's promising. I'll just
But
say,
like every time I watch a good one now,
you're worried it's the last one except the finale.
it's like, I'm like, is that the last one? Have I just got to suffer through it now? There's a fear.
I mean, I could literally just skim the rest of the season and see how many, like...
But don't do that. Don't spoil the fun or the fear.
I'm not going to tell you. Don't worry.
Don't spoil the fun or the fear for yourself.
Oh, I know. Oh, jeez, that one's low. I don't know if I've seen one that low.
Do I want to know which number?
I won't tell you which number it is. No, I'll let you discover that as we go.
Experience it for the first time. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, this is interesting. So I know how many. When I say how I'm talking above an 8, I know how many above an 8s there are, and I know.
I bet it's not many, is there?
But I also know that we go below a 5 for one episode.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay.
I don't know. There has to have been a terrible season 1 episode that was that low. I have to go back and check.
Well, the second episode, let's be honest.
Yeah, Code of Silence, whatever that episode was called, the racist one. Anyway,
yeah.
That is Star Trek: The Next Generation. Hopefully you enjoyed our ramblings and discussion, and we'll see you next time for Deep Space Nine. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching. We do appreciate it. Go support us all on Patreon, keep all the content coming, it helps out a bunch. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher's the security officer on the bridge of the Enterprise, apparently.